before I go into full introduction mode with James, I'm actually going to start with, as some of you know, I love to start with a little reading from the book. So James, and I'm sorry because I just covered up my screen and I don't know if you're muted or unmuted.
No, I'm
You're
okay.
good. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to start with a little reading, and then I'm going to launch into a lovely conversation with James, who, by the way, is back for the second time. We had a little technical glitch on the day that he was last with us. We had the well heard of now Zoom hacking experience, but we managed to escape pretty quickly. So under the heading of reinvention, it comes with a lot of change. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in my reading, and then share with you just some really great thoughts and conversation points today. In my life, change was always an adventure. Throughout my childhood, we moved to 3 different countries and had to start over in new neighborhoods and with new friends, schools, and surroundings. I loved it and took on each move with curiosity, a sense of exploration, and an interest to build the next place in my life. It gave me the tools to appreciate new things and get to know something or someone from the beginning. I was a student of the world and exposed to all the diversities of life, races, religions, classes. It's the fabric of me, all woven together. When tackling a new project, client, hobby, friendship, I embrace it with this attitude. Not everyone has the same feeling about change and reinvention, though. The unknown can be a little daunting, but I encourage you to look at the rewards, the upside, and the potential outcome. Take baby steps to get there. Huge leaps aren't necessary. And if you're just procrastinating, try not to let your to-dos get in the way of your what-ifs. Spread your wings and embrace the beauty and the excitement of the newness. If you find something you love to do with the same sense of wonder and exploration you experienced as a kid, you'll love what you do with your life. Take it from someone who knows, after 30 years of loving what I do, I'm still reinventing every day. And I think that is such a perfect segue into my introduction to James, who has been a friend of mine for, I don't know, did we stop counting somewhere after 20? Does that just age us?
5
right?
companies work for me.
Exactly. So James and I go way back. We've been in rooms and meetings and conversations across many companies, from Saatchi and Saatchi to Cito. Is that how I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah.
And other ventures. And when James made his move, which is in my book, and we'll talk a little bit about in a moment, to work alongside Gary Vaynerchuk at VaynerMedia in its infancy, he called me up and said, you got to check this out. And I just have to share with you. I went into the office in New York one day. As you all know, I'm based in LA. I'm in New York every month. And he said, you got to pop in and just, see what's going on here. And he was not kidding. That right there was a spectacle. Probably 300 people plus in an office space that was maybe designed for 150 people, I'm going to guess. And aside from being able to walk into James' office and sit down on a chair in a room with him, the subsequent meetings that I had as we started collaborating on some projects together included my sitting in a stairwell, in an elevator. Yes, I mean, it was amazing. So Vayner in its infancy as a company was exploding. And James was, helping Gary run the entire operation. They then moved to Hudson Yards, big, beautiful space. And James is this incredible serial entrepreneur. He is an incredible second in command. He's an incredible CEO. And he has taken the Sasha Group, which is the offshoot of VaynerMedia's existing business, and created this unbelievable consulting and marketing company for companies that are doing sort of the $1 million to $200 million revenue sort of category of business. So without further ado, and with that introduction being said, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm thrilled to have you here and in chapter 14.
Yes. 14 is rapidly becoming my favorite number. So
I know. Well, we'll get a jersey for you that's got 14 on the back.
very good.
But James, you love what you do. And, you know, this conversation about change that I started with, it has been a really integral part of your career path.
Yeah.
And you've kind of taken your passions. You know, I think you're a lot like me. You never don't have a smile on your face. You're never not having a great time doing what you're doing. And you've kind of taken the skills and your smarts and your passion, and you've been able to always parlay that and your aha moments, your realization that it's time and there's something afoot, and what is it and where is it, and you almost go out and seek it because you know that change can be really fun and it can be a great adventure. So, you know, here you were on the precipice of your next adventure, and you were having a conversation with Gary, and you were confronted with this ability to join a company that had 800 millennials in it at the ripe age of 50 plus. And, you know, talk about that a little bit. Like, that had to have been a really interesting crossroads and moment in your life as you were evaluating, you know, do I, don't I, what's next?
You know, it's the interesting part was I've never really been, I'm a creature of habit, but was never really afraid of change, right? So started out as a New York State CPA, a public accounting auditor. We realized that I didn't want to be a partner in an accounting firm. I left to go to Wall Street and worked at Goldman Sachs for a few years, and quickly found out I'm not sure that's going to be for me. And then found my way into marketing. And, you know, we were talking about all those companies, whether it was MS&L Group, you know, in public relations, or Interbrand in the branding, or Saatchi in the general market advertising, or Cito in the mobile. So it was clear that marketing was for me. And I had always been a much better businessman than I ever was accountant. So after leaving Cito as the CEO, yet another venture where I said, okay, great. I'm glad I was a CEO of a publicly traded company, but I know what I don't want to be when I grow up. I don't want to be another CEO of a publicly traded company. It was a hard and lonely job. You know, glad to say I did it. There's very few who can. It's often a topic of conversation in a room, you know, because you're often an individual of one when you're standing there and said, hey, who here has been a publicly traded company CEO? So I was looking for the next thing. And quite frankly, I had never heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. And when people were asking me, they thought it odd that I hadn't, but you know, it was early on, maybe 6 years ago or so when we started. And they said, look, you should have a meeting with him. I knew his brother because I had sat next to his brother 10 years ago at a Seton Hall University basketball game. That's how we met. So I meet Gary, and he says, James, I want to build a $500 million independent, integrated international communications company. Can you help me do that? And I said, yeah, I think I can, actually. So he's like, great, you know, don't take one of those other jobs. You've had them. Come and join me here. Step out on a cloud and join me here. And I didn't say yes because I still really didn't know him. So I met with some other folks who I had respected in the space. And they were like, James, do you know who he is? And I said, no. They said, he's kind of like Steve Zuckerberg kind of guy, you know, and he, you know, he probably needs somebody like you to help really bring this vision to pass. So I went back and I said yes. And early on, it was me, him, and his brother. He had a general counsel who's still there, and he had a finance director. So off we go. At that time, 42 million and a little under 400 people. Average age 25 at the time that I joined, and I was probably 50, you know, better part of 51, 52. But he was bright enough to say, James, you've made 25 years of mistakes I don't want to make. help me avoid the potholes and move faster. So that was what he saw in why you're going to connect with somebody, somebody like this.
And for you, that must have been very refreshing to know that this guy thought that way and could really value what you were going to do to sort of really circumvent all of those 25 years of experience.
I thought he was brilliant because he wasn't a marketer. He was a retailer, and he paid a lot of money for somebody like me to come on board, and I just thought he was brilliant to do it. You know what I mean? Wow, talk about stepping out on the cloud. He stepped out on the cloud to be able to do it. Fast forward 5 years later, we had built a 150 million international 900 person marketing company, which includes a production studio, a media company, a digital publishing company. We did our first acquisition. He had never acquired a company. He was used to growing organically. But more importantly, he hired a lot of senior people. We put a lot of people around the table, right? Because you had to scale him. So, chief production officer, chief creative officer, chief financial officer, because he kind of outgrew the guy that was there, chief marketing officer, chief heart officer, chief strategy officer, many of which were folks that I worked with in the past or knew or helped him interview. And then came, last year, really towards the end of 2018, November of 2018, he said, "Are you ready to start something new?" Which is always a refreshing comment for a 55-year-old male in the advertising industry. Are you ready to start something new? Usually it's, are you ready to exit now? We're done with it.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to start something new. What do you have in mind? And he said, I have 10 million followers. I'm on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine, and we built a company to service Fortune 500. And I don't have a product for all these small businesses. And he said, look, come over to my inbox. And he was flipping through, hey, Gary, I'm $3 million pizzeria chain. I want to be a $60 million wine library. Help me get there, that kind of stuff. So he said, I want to start a new company. I want to name it after my father for legacy purposes, so don't screw it up. So that's where Sasha comes
from. No pressure. Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. His brother had since retired from the business, probably 15 or 18 months after I joined. And that's how I became the chief operating officer. His brother held that title before. So I said, great. He goes, okay, well, so what do you need? How are we going to do it? What do you need? And I said, I'd like to take those, now 30 years of working and pull the best from, the KPMGs, the Goldmans, the Interbrands, the Sachis of this world. I said, and I think it should be more of a consultancy than an advertising agency. So I said, it really shouldn't be a mini VaynerMedia. So let me tell you, what it's not. This is not the trinkets and trash that VaynerMedia doesn't want to service. A big client with a little budget is not a small business. That's simply a cheap client. So we don't want to service those, right? So we want to help, entrepreneurs, founders. Today we don't have many. I don't have many budgets with a brand manager that controls a budget. I'm dealing with, the people who founded the business, own the business, or are about to launch a business. And that's kind of what we've done. So, first year out of the box, we were pretty successful. We did about 10 million in revenue profitably. And now here we are on year 2 in the middle of a pandemic. But we're pivoting.
And that right there, I mean, look at what I have a friend, she's actually on here today, who opened a retail store in January on the East Coast. Opening a business and getting everything going and the momentum, and you're hitting your stride, and it's the new year, and we've just like gotten over the Christmas hurdle and everybody's raring to go, and boom, you're hit with February, March, and we all know what's just happened in the last 2 months. So before we get into that conversation, which I do want to do, because I think there's a lot of great things that you're doing that I know, that I've read, that we've talked about. But before we do, you sort of had to bring a lot of what we call, the toolkit. You've built a toolkit through life. The practical, the skills, the knowledge, the people. What would you say were kind of the essential skills that you had to really lean into in what you're doing?
Well, the reason why I left Saatchi to go to Cedo Mobile was because it was not a service sector company. I said, if I'm going to leave, we all do it the same way, right? You're in public relations, whether you're in accounting, public relations, law firm, advertising, it's all hours times rates for people. The assets go down the elevator at night, right? We don't manufacture anything.
Yeah.
I left to go to Cedo because it was a transactional pipe. And my job was to push more stuff through the pipe. It wasn't a model of, in order to grow, I had to hire more people and take on more space.
Right.
So part of what I brought to Cedo is, hey, I'm going to run this like a consultancy. I'm going to productize the offering. We're going to do education, consulting, and digital marketing. So it's a consulting firm on the front end and an advertising agency on the back end. But, I don't do RFPs. I don't really do spec work. I try not to work off of, scopes of work with hours and rates and things like that, which is how we are as profitable as we are, with the highest revenue per head, within the hallways of the VaynerX. So I'm leaning on 30 years of, I know how to do this, follow me, and by the way, we can do branding too, right? So let me bring in 1 or 2 people that does the brand side and, and the logo design. And Gary's like, great, I want to do a lot of logos. I said, wait a second, I don't want to be the guy that does a $5,000 logo when you can get a logo for $500. I want to be the guy that does $150,000 branding in 90 days, when if you went to Interbrand, that would be $500,000 and take 4 months. That's kind of where we are with this. So, so it's, so as a result, I indexed heavily on senior people. I mean, I have 8 VP level and above for a company that's only 42.
Which is fascinating. Yeah.
And in the service,
especially given Vayner's kind of, roots in these young hotshot kids,
right,
if you will, and all that happens around digital and content.
Right. So the opposite of Vayner, right, which built a bottom-up Pied Piper type following very successfully, scaled enormously quick. This is a top-down, senior consulting, because you're talking to the founders and the CEOs. You want to know that who they're talking to has been there and done that before. When I ask them for $50,000, that's the same $50,000 they might send a kid to school with. So now I have to show them, look, give this to me and I'll help you make it 150. So you'll be able to send the kid to school and then some. They got to trust what's across the table saying that. So that's why I have, I have four senior vice presidents that ran portfolios of, each one of them ran portfolios of business bigger than Sasha Group within the hallways of VaynerMedia.
Yeah.
So a lot of horsepower here.
It's amazing. And it's interesting because at a time like this, when we're being forced to really look at talent versus real estate, and I think that's a big, big conversation happening right now across many companies, but in the service business, it's a conversation we're all having every day. The talent is the value proposition. How much do we need? How much office space? And how many offices? And the physical real estate that is a big part of our budget and a big part of our overhead. And the fact that there's value.
We're going to see that very differently now. I mean, commercial real estate, as we know it, is going to change. The same way there was inflection points, right? And the cubicles came down and the open work areas went up. I would not want to be a commercial real estate landlord at this moment. It's going to be a really, really tough situation for them to kind of.
Yeah, I actually sat, just as an aside, I was asked to come and sit in on the Beverly Hills City Council study session, as they call it, yesterday, where they invited tenants and landlords to come sort of speak their piece about what's going on right now. Two sides of that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
To create a mandate and a standard for how the landlords should be treating the tenants. And there are tenants like us that are smaller boutique size companies. And then there are the big companies that maybe, you know, don't mind paying rent every month while they're not generating the same amount of revenue.
Yeah, I saw an interesting interview on CNBC with the CEO of Related, which owns the Hudson Yards property.
Right.
And the retail mall, they weren't charging rent. They were taking a percentage of sales. So, you know, that's both good and bad, right? In a prosperous time,
right,
prospering. But in a time like this, it is zero because there are no sales there.
Right.
But it is like when it reopens, they will go back there because it's a percentage of sales that they're paying the rent on, right? So they're going to walk back in there and hope to sell, you know, a lot in the process. So it was a unique business deal there.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, as you're doing this, as you're going through the motions of what's happening right now and these challenges, what does the conversation sound like? You're having to remain very optimistic, and you've got a job to do for your clients. You've got an incredible staff around you that are juggling the day-to-day of homeschooling and working out of the basement or someone's bedroom or where the middle of the house if need be. What do those conversations sound like, and how is that working? And then talk a little bit about how you've had to sort of pivot with your clients. How are you guiding them? How are you advising them as far as how they're looking towards the next 18 months? What is that looking like?
So the interesting thing is I've never been more close to my management team than now, and this separation. So I start every morning with the goal of the day for my leadership through an app called Marco Polo. It's a sort of a video texting app where I give them a little video snippet for probably 90 seconds and talk about, you know, what we're focused on today. I ground them first, because we won't ask our clients to do anything that we wouldn't do ourselves, right? So I shared the stage recently, virtual stage, with Matt Higgins, who is one of the Shark Tank guests, Shark, I guess you would call him, I guess. And he encapsulated it very, very nicely. He said it's a time to absorb, right? Because the world is different than what it was 90 days ago. It's a time to adapt. So this is about survival, not about profit at this time. And it's a time to attack, meaning you should be moving one piece of your business to offense, because from his experience as president of the Miami Dolphins, he realizes that you can't win a game solely with defense, right? Mm-hmm. So take a piece of your business and move it to offense. And I thought that was, you know, really interesting nuggets. So what have we done to move a piece of our business to offense? We came up with 3 new products that are out in the market now and selling very well. We were noted for our whiteboard sessions, 2 weeks worth of research, you know, a 3 to 3.5 hour face-to-face with management, you know, maybe 3 or 4 people from the client side, 4 or 5 from my team, depending on what's needed, and helping management break through problems, whatever those situations are.
That's something you've been doing for quite some time, correct? That's something that's been a mainstay of Sasha.
Yeah, right from the beginning. We, you know, and they were selling, you know, north of $35,000, depending. So now we pivoted to a virtual whiteboard session using technology like Zoom and some others, where we can actually break up into different rooms and focus groups and be able to actually, there's a technology that my team uses to actually do sort of whiteboard posted sticker notes in a virtual setting. We're doing them for $15,000 or $20,000, and that's a pivot for us. We're doing them faster and quicker. Another thing that we did was we take for granted what we call sweating the assets, right? So we'll usually take a piece of hero content, that video or whatever, and then kind of break it up into other pieces, what we call DJ. Some of the become Instagram, Facebook, or what have you. So we have a product now called Mixtape. Which is sort of send us 5 assets in 5 days and for $5,000, and we will remix them and let you have fresh content, right? So we know nobody's shooting live action productions right now. You can't go outside. So how does a company make the assets that they have look fresh and new? And then the last product.
Really interesting. Sorry, just, that is sort of the mainstay of, how to create great content. And I think a lot of us are in a position where we're either doing it ourselves, or we're advising our clients, or we're trying to make sense out of how to utilize content that we can repurpose even more so. And I think that's also been like a real sweet spot of both VaynerMedia and what you're doing with Sasha Group, right?
And it has been because we understand how the consumers consume the content on each of the platforms.
Exactly.
A lot of people make mistakes by the same piece of content. I'm going to put this on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and LinkedIn, and the consumer simply doesn't consume the content the same way. Yep. So nuances, the DJing, the mixtaping of the content that makes it most appropriate for the platform. And then the third thing that we launched in the pivot capacity was we were about to go live on April 1 with a subscription product, right? A 5 to 7 minute tutorial video that comes out on a Monday, that we then share additional content on a Wednesday, that then has an Ask Me Anything on the topic in a Facebook community on a Friday. It was going to launch as a subscription model, and we decided to launch it during this pandemic as a community model first. So for the first 5 or 6 weeks, you get this product called Stork for free. And it's, just little how-tos, real tactical, how to advertise on podcasting, how to find influencers for your local business, how to broadcast, live stream, stuff that's relevant right now. In fact, there is one coming out, I think it's week 4, if I'm not mistaken, or week 5, on the Marco Polo app, but it's less a particular app. It's more about, what are some of the resources out there for you when you're in a virtual world? How do you keep it going? So those were our three demonstrated pivots. That's taking a piece of our business and moving it to offense, rather than just hunker down and hope, everything's going to pass me by, right? That's kind of been some of what is a real issue in the advertising industry. They take what I call the ostrich approach, right? I'm going to bury my head in the sand. I'm really going to hope everything just passes by. When I pull my head up, it'll all be good again.
Yeah. And I think, look, the timing is so right now. Like 4 weeks ago, people were still in this very gray area of, oh my God, what's going on in our world? And what am I going to do? And how am I going to work from home? And starting to get back into work mode. Now, I think we are all like, it's time to get up and kids, make your own sandwiches. And I've got work to do, and people are very focused and head down and facing forward on the optimistic perspective of what their business is, what it isn't, what it is reinvented, if you will. And, it's interesting. Is it a good time? I mean, you've certainly as a company put some really specific measures in place to deal with who you are as a company and how you're going to support them. But my question was going to be to you, is this a good time to procure new business? What's the percentage rate of companies that are saying, I can't deal with it. I've just fired 2/3 of my workforce. I don't know what the future holds, versus, oh my God, I'm doubling down on commitments from folks like you, because guess what? I don't want to hire talent internally. I need the external agency for 3 months or 6 months or a year, and not make those long-term commitments to top-level new management teams to do that job. So it almost puts you in a position of being, as it does with us, an external CMO. So curious how that's kind of hitting.
I think it's well, a couple things on that. One, we're entering what I heard someone use the term post-abundance society, and what they're saying is that folks are going to revisit spend not only by wallet but by psyche, right? So it's not going to be just about the money, but it'll be about the mood.
Mm-hmm.
I have the money. Do I feel good making this purchase? Right. That's what we're going to be entering into. So one of the questions is, what if I could start my business all over again? What would it be? Okay. And if you ask Gary right now,
Yeah.
he says that he is most excited about the Sasha Group. It is the most, what he calls, Gary-centric company of his portfolios of companies.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And he launched another one last week. Just last week, he launched something called VaynerCommerce. Okay.
Love that.
So there's one where he's investing in a pandemic time, but he's investing, where people are going, right? So he's not investing in a newspaper, right? I think there's a lot of prosperity going on right now, and I'm not just talking about people who are taking advantage of fear factors and pandemics and stuff like that. It's not about that, right? You're on a piece of software that most people hadn't heard of, right? We're here on a Zoom conference, nobody heard of it, right? Yeah. So, and some are doing it better than others, right? It appears that Lyft got the delivery thing down right where Uber didn't, right? Yeah. And they look good. I think trust is going to be a much bigger factor now, because you're not sitting across the table, you're not shaking hands, you're not, right? So I was baffled today when I heard on CNBC that the Virgin Media O2 Telefonica $39 billion merger that took place today was done over the telephone, not even over a Zoom.
Wow.
A $39 billion M&A transaction done over the telephone. And when they asked the banker, how is that possible? He said, because the two parties had a trusting relationship. Trust, vitally important now.
And I think, there's sort of a human nature quality that has emanated from all of this, where people are really going back to, you said earlier, you're closer with your management team than you've ever been. And there is something about knowing that piece of art behind somebody, the library of books behind them, the dog running in, the kid, I'm sorry, I got to just fix my kids' homework before I get on the call. Like, it's bringing people closer. And I think, the point you just bring up about the human connection and the trust relationships are what we're going to look for even more so going forward as we're continuing to build and grow our businesses.
Yeah.
Because that's really, the humanity piece of it.
Yeah, I think what's made us successful is really understanding what each of those people bring to the table, right? So I wrote a piece, Don't Delegate, Facilitate. And it was, on the notion of really understanding what your team members bring to the table. So what Sasha is doing better than what Vayner did was Sasha's doing a lot of central casting, right? So I'm geographic or discipline blind when the opportunity comes in. I'm like, wait a second, this is a beverage, and that guy is best for the beverage. I don't really care what's on his plate right now,
Right.
to here's a piece of business, you have time, let me put those two pieces together. I'm more saying, I'm most likely going to win this and service it with excellence because this woman has a passion for jewelry, and this is a diamond exchange, right? Yeah. So that's kind of how it's working. So I see it as one. I see it as Sasha. I mean, I call it north, south, and west because I have 3 offices, but the fact of the matter is I see it as one. I'll put the pieces. I do quarterback all the pieces, right? As the facilitator, yeah, I quarterback the pieces. So, it's coming to me, hey, you know what, that you're talking about that needs a little animation. I found out that there's a designer in Chattanooga who has a passion for animation. Call her, and it's,
which is amazing because, it says a lot about what's happening right now from an HR point of view. And I've met Claude, who was the chief heart officer, or probably still is at Vayner, and she's amazing. Mm-hmm. And, when you start to nurture and recognize in the team and the staff what their passions are, and you're running a business and you're able to sort of pivot and say, hey, I know that someone who's the engineer has a passion for photography and that's mm-hmm. their weekend hobby, and you know more about the people that are on your teams, there are ways to bring their whole self to work and ways that's really going to ingratiate them to the companies they're working with and the people they're working for. Right. So I think we've entered in a period of work, and this is not related to COVID per se, but it's just coming out even more, where the whole self is welcome. And it used to not be as much that way. But now, as we're able to recognize and really acknowledge what people are up to and what they're doing with their lives and where they can lend themselves to what we're doing every day, it's pretty fabulous. I'm watching the clock, James, because I know you're on a time crunch. Do you have time for 1 or 2 questions?
Yeah, let's take a couple questions.
I have many more, but I think that Laurence had his hand raised, and I want to make sure if there was a question there, Laurence, did you mean to raise your hand?
That was an accident, but hi.
Oh, okay, well, hi, okay. Then I don't think we have any questions.
Marvin's raising his hand.
Marvin, sorry, yes. Hi, Marvin.
Hi, Kathi. James, thanks so much. Really impressed. I did some homework on your background before, and Gary's a unique individual for sure to work with. So I guess it's a 2-part question. Is one, Gary kind of reinvented the thought leader turned monetize my thought leader-ish style into something where we can make money. And 2, then find other verticals to make money. Did you see this coming because of your background, that the Gary V, Jay Shetty, build however long a list you want, we're going to be this valuable to the community? And then the part 2 question is this going to be the new education program for entrepreneurs instead of a typical university?
So Gary got a great appreciation for brand. And he understood that branding and sales are 2 different things. So he spent a lot of time on the Gary V brand. And he quickly realized that if the brand is that powerful, I could do whatever I want to do. I could be an advertising guy, even though I'm not an advertising guy. I could sell wine. I could sell sneakers. I could buy an esports team, because he took the time to build that brand. Right? So that's the way it runs in Japan. I mean, as I knew from my time at Interbrand, it's one of the rare few places where Mitsubishi can be a car, can be a construction company, can be a television, because it's the power of the brand, right? Mm-hmm. So he differs from a Tony Robbins in that he doesn't look to monetize his stuff through a, guru-ish, follow my ways kind of thing, right? So I remember early on when Kathi visited that office on Park Avenue, he was doing the Ask Gary V show. And a caller came in and said, Gary, why are you giving away all this stuff for free? You're giving away like all this great information for free. And he goes, don't worry about it. He goes, there's going to be a time where I'll monetize it. He goes, in fact, I'm probably going to write a book and then I'll sell it back to you. And he did. 2 years later, he wrote the Ask Gary V book. It was a New York Times bestseller. And it was just an encapsulation of all that free content that he had given put in one spot, right? So he wrote a LinkedIn post recently about free content to paid access. I read the LinkedIn post. So I said, great, this is what we're going to do with my Stork product. We're going to give it away for free for 5 or 6 years. Then I'm going to flip the switch and I'm going to turn it to subscription once I have them hooked. So I hope that answers the question.
It
Yes,
does,
Sarah.
but my second part is
Oh,
this going to be
okay.
the new education process?
Okay. Yeah, so part of what we do at the Sasha Group is education, right? And we have various forms of it. We have what's called the 4Ds class, which is a combination classroom workshop type setting, intense, 9 hours, 12 person per class. Gary's in the room for an hour and a half, and we'll rotate through senior leaders of the VaynerX world to educate them across the platform. Think of it like a Zappos or a Disney Day in the Life. This is looking under the hood of how we see the platforms, how the consumers consume the content on the platforms. It's pricey. It's an investment. We've had 20 plus classes sold out, over 750 alumni. And the prices vary based on location. New York is 15,000, a little less in LA, 8,000 in Chattanooga, that kind of stuff. We also do corporate education, right? So I don't know where you're based, but on the West Coast, Henkel called us in and said, look, we got 200 people we want to educate. We're not going to send them through 4Ds and pay all that money. So I'm like, great, we'll customize a corporate education program. And they were like, great, we'd like Gary to be the keynote. And I'm like, yeah, you can't afford him. So let's go to Vayner speakers and we'll get somebody who is right for you. And they picked one. And then they picked 4 modules from the 4Ds, and we customized a setting around that. And I put 4 of my people in different rooms, and they rotated 50 of their people through. And it was like speed dating. And by the end of the day, their 200 were trained in those 4 modules. And then others pay us for webinars now, which we're doing now. We were contacted by a society in Europe that represents female-owned businesses in third world countries. And they wanted 3 different training modules from us. So, we'll be doing those in May and early June to help train them. So yeah, education is vitally important.
Yeah, and probably more so now than ever before, because this new way of thinking, the ability to be agile, the ability not to be stuck and steeped in old ways of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this pivot reinvention that everybody's going through is so critical.
Right.
Can we give Sarah a moment
Thank you.
before you jump, James? Thanks,
James,
Mark.
if you have to run, we can touch base later. I just
No,
thought,
yeah, go ahead. I'm good for 2 more. I'll take 2.
great.
Go for it.
So obviously both blessed to be connected through Gary's siblings, which has been a godsend, and the family blood they're all incredible. I'm just curious, with everything that you have on your plate, what keeps you up at night?
I sleep really well at night. I got to admit, my family is very important to me. They're all here. We're safe. We're happy. I really love what I'm doing here in the business. I spend a lot of time making sure that my employees understand, what I'm doing. I take the time to educate them about that. I don't have a ton of fears or anxieties right now.
I meant more in terms of like, what is something you want to get to that you haven't been able to get to that just like is driving you?
I want to meet my objectives, and I have 2 cylinders of my 8-cylinder engine that are shut down. So I'm thinking about that. I was supposed to grow the business by 30% year over year this year. I feel pretty good that I could grow it at 20. I think I've lost ground. I was fine. Double-digit profitable January and February, lost money in March, worked hard to break even in April, trying to get back to a 10% margin in May. So, look, at the core, I'm an accountant, right? So I think about that stuff. And I want to be able, I know how hard it is at the VaynerX level because I've been there, right? So I've been a CEO, I've been a COO, I've been a CFO twice globally. I know what they're going through. I feel for them. I feel the pain. You know, it's not easy, especially when you're culturally driven to lay people off, and you know, and they've had layoffs. They let go 5% of the staff there. Now we as Sasha hired 4 people. I took 2 of the ones that they were laying off. I took 2 others. You know, so I'm doing what I can. We're a small business in the hallways there. So every once in a while, I'll text the general counsel, I'll text the CFO, you know, I'll text Gary. Look, this is a hard time. I wrote an article on getting through. Right, I was at Goldman in 87, 88 for Black Monday. I was at Interbrand for 9/11. I was at Saatchi for the 2008 collapse. I know how to burn the furniture to stay warm. I have done that. I'm glad I'm not the guy having to do that again. You know, it wears on you. So I feel for them. So when they said, hey, look, you know, we think we're going to let go of that space that you're in Broadway, you know, like tomorrow, because we could use the money. I said, yeah, all right, great. Don't worry. We're functioning. So wherever you put us, we'll put us. So that kind of flexibility. So I guess, Sarah, to your point, I do think about that. And that could be something that makes me a little anxious.
Well, you have to some degree, take that and go, okay, now I've got to put energy and focus into rebuilding our team in a place in a way that works. And what is that? And there is a certain discomfort with, you know, moving out of our comfort zone. It's what we're all dealing with in different ways right now, all different levels of our lives, all different places. And yeah, we have to kind of take a deep breath, know that, you know, some of these things are not life or death. They may be uncomfortable. They may require, you know, being open-minded and pivoting and really thinking creatively as how to get through them. But change can be really fun. And if we have the right frame of mind and we can address it that way, then that can be a real adventure. And you're clearly the master of that at this point, James. So it's really fun to, I feel like
I'm getting better by reading this.
Oh, I thank you kindly. Well, on that note, I am going to take us out with one very small quote, a wonderful quote. After all, the only certainty in life is change. Our interests change, our friends change, we meet new people who inspire us with what they have experienced and seen in the world. We want new things out of life. We grow out of oneself and we reinvent another. So there's a lot of excitement around change and reinvention, and I hope that you all see the positive in it and, you know, put your toolkit together, get ready for a dose of courage that you're going to need, and just, you know, let's just keep talking. And James, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
James had to sign out because he had to, he warned me weeks ago that he would have a window today. I just have just a couple more minutes. So I'm trying to just unmute all of you. I think you are, but you may be muted on your own. But if anybody else wants to take a moment to talk or chat or share anything that is monumental that's going on in your reinvention process that you can share, we got a few minutes, and if not, we will say farewell.
How's the book tour, Kathi?
My virtual book tour is quite fabulous, I have to say. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I am getting to see a lot of people I wouldn't have otherwise seen. I even had a girlfriend throw me a book party last Wednesday night, and it was amazing. It was interactive. We played drinking games. Every time somebody said reinvent, everybody had to take a sip. We did trivia giveaways, so we talked pop cultural moments during COVID and did trivia games out of that. I did a book reading, and a lot of people then wanted to order the book. So I feel like I had my book signing. It just took longer to hand it to them because I got to sign books and send them off to people afterwards. So it just, you know, like I said before, it's creating a catalyst for a lot of creativity. And
So-
we're doing it with our clients. I mean, we're having to really think out of the box for them to take them into what their new event, virtual marketing, digital space will be.
So some of the bookstores that we're going to do in-store signings, do they move to virtual
I'm
Zoom?
just talking to them now about it because it kind of felt like not the right time for the last month or so, but now I'm starting to do that
Oh,
because
good.
there a lot of them are doing like webinars and online sessions, and you know, it's something that I would just love to be able to do. So yeah.
So Kathi, I'm curious, so I was going to ask how you were organizing these virtual book tours. So you've yet to do them through, you know, traditional booksellers. So how so far? And by the way, your background is fabulous. it looks very much like you're just going to go to that table and start signing books. But how did you sort of initiate and get that process going? Just using your database and gathering people together, or how did you get the virtual tour started?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of things. I mean, fortunately, I run a marketing company. And so doing what I do for a living, we have the resources and a lot of the ingenuity and the team, Xenia and Lauren, who are here on the call with us, who are part of my Sharpe Alliance agency, to really be able to, you know, to research the best opportunities, to reach out to companies, to send them the right content and information, to be able to, you know, offer them my expertise at a time when there is a very important topic in the center of that conversation. So the book happens to be an incredibly relevant book with this title. And so it's just really, it's been a lot of that. I mean, I have a lot of friends in business, companies, people who want to put on events that will invite their own people to them.
Yeah.
And reaching out to Barnes & Noble, which I had done before all this started, and the manager, and saying, hey, I can't come to the Grove, but I am local. I am a member of this community. I've been shopping in the Grove for the last, you know, 25 years since my kids were little, but since it's been there pretty much. And if you're going to be doing online events, I'd like to offer this up. It happens to be a great topic. I've reached out to all my friends in the PR business and said, please know that if you're talking to reporters, editors, producers, I am a viable and very relevant authority, expert, author on this conversation right now. And here are 20 speaking topics. So I'm planting the seeds everywhere. I've been asked to speak at a lot of webinars, a lot of panels, a lot of Zoom events like this. So, you know, that is something that we're just, you know, working it every day, all the time, reaching out to podcasts that are relevant on this subject, keeping an eye on what other folks are doing in this space. And, you know, it's hard work, but it's kind of in line with what we do every day in our business for our clients as well. So it is a little second nature to, you know, what we do all day. So I think that's how it will manifest. And, you know, we have clients to deal with as well. So it's not like we're doing this full time.
No, but I'm impressed. Obviously, with your marketing background,
Thank you.
It makes full sense. But you know, there's something else that's very serendipitous. Is that you wrote this book before all this was happening? That's what I think is so amazing.
I know.
So right place, right time, which hopefully will mean the success of your book, because you know you want to write a book and hopefully it's a success.
You.
But on the other hand, it's a book that I'm personally really enjoying. I'm doing the exercises and finding it very, very interesting and motivating. And like with everything, I kind of take what I need and leave the rest. Not everything is applicable to me.
Exactly.
But it's chock full of information. And as I've told you before, your writing style is so approachable and engaging. It's a fun read.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I think, you know, we were in a conversation the other day. I forget who I was. Oh, I did an interview with Cal Fussman for his podcast yesterday. And we were talking about these kind of moments where you stop and evaluate. And if any of you were on the Brad Jakeman interview that we did a couple of weeks ago, you know, this ability to stop and say, what do I value and what's important to me in my life? What am I actually doing every day? And how can I do better in the future to align what I value with what I'm doing? And when you start to put that on paper and you start to see the disparity between what you value and what you're actually doing, it's a very powerful exercise. And it's one you've got to be ready to deal with the consequences of what you put on paper. Because when you're then staring that in the face going, oh, this is really what I value and love and who I want to be, and I'm not doing any of that, you know, when you get to that moment and you go, well, what am I going to do about it? Now you have to be accountable. You have to literally, I mean, you don't have to be, but if you really want to be happy and you want to move yourself in the direction of where you think you want your life to be, that's when the hard work really starts. And hopefully the great work and the ability to really hunker down and start to make sense out of what's important to you. And it's one thing to go, yeah, I know, I love this and I love that and I'm going to do this. If you don't go through the motions of that exercise, odds are you're probably not going to end up where you're hoping you will be. And you'll still be saying the same thing in 2 years and in 5 years, maybe in 10 years. And wishing and wanting and looking at everybody else's life and going, I wish I could, and they are, and I'm not. So, you know, there's in my book, I sort of say, put the pen, you know, put the book down and go do this. No,
That's
I'm
the
not.
funny, that was the funniest part. I actually just passed that section.
You're like, wait,
where
is she watching?
where you want to where you have to put everything down. You know, you have a list to start us of everything that you really love, what you love. Okay. And then it's so funny because I turned the page and it's like, nope, stop, put down the book. You need to do this exercise now. Right. So I did.
And you're like, how did you know that I wasn't doing that? Because we don't. We'll just keep reading and thank you that you keep turning the pages. But I really mean that. Like you have to do the exercise.
You know, what's so interesting about all of that is, you know, Kathi, you could have actually launched this book 10 years ago. You're launching it now. You can launch it 10 years from now. The values are the values. That's something, like you said, we really have to lock into and be committed to. What's interesting that's happening in times of COVID, if you will, is the same things are taking on different meanings. And we're realizing there's multiple meanings and different meanings. And I mean, even James was talking about how they had to pivot the offense. Things don't mean the same thing anymore. They have a different interpretation. And I find that that's kind of like the next stage of processing everything, because you have your core values, but then your thing something has a different meaning or a different interpretation. So you have to kind of apply it or approach it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Yes, Marvin.
Love the way you said that.
Yes.
Just so you guys know, Kathi is one of my mentors. So anytime I get to share, it's like telling the teacher, like, hey, this is what I learned. But one thing, and it's true, you are one of my mentors. One of the things that I've seen is we work so hard, let's say before all this, to do everything we can to then spend time with the people we love, we care, and we respect. Now, for the most of us, we are spending the majority of the time with the people that we love, care, and respect. And people aren't realizing that, well, that's what they wanted to begin with. So now you're getting what you wanted, because you really want that. And if you wanted it, then invest the time. Like, I mean, you see with Mom and I, it's, you know, it's a reality show that I just haven't filmed yet. But I mean, with a lot of us, it's like you really need to like the people you're around. And if really what you meant by love, care, and respect is, I'll see you once a week, but you know, let's not push it. This is where this is really coming out. Like, how much do you really care about the people you love, you care, and respect? Because now they're right in front of you. And you got no place to hide, no place to duck, and no rationale.
Yeah. It's true. It's really interesting. And I think we've all gone through stages of the good, the bad, and there are those who are living on their own. There are those who have too many family members around. There's, you know, all different incarnations. Oops, sorry. Speaking of which, my son is calling me. You know, and I went from week one making 3 meals a day for my family because it was so novel that I was at home in the middle of the day on a Tuesday, and I could make breakfast, lunch, and dinner and clean the kitchen and do work because the workload was in such a precarious spot for those first few weeks. And now it's like, nah, fend for yourself, guys. Going into my office and you're not going to see me till 6 o'clock. You know, so anyway, I know we've gone over, and I really appreciate all of you just hanging out and being here. I think this is an amazing time for us to talk and share and brainstorm. And Beverly, welcome to the group. I love having you here.
Thank you. Thank you. My friend Laurence turned me on to you. So
oh, fabulous. Well, thanks, Laurence. And you know, every conversation, every virtual chat, it has a different theme, a different group of people, a lot of the same people, and you know, it's part business therapy. I mean, getting James to do that kind of download today on his perspective is amazing. I know that a lot of us that do some of what we do can really appreciate that. You know, and every person that comes on has sort of a different perspective on what all this means in terms of both reinventing and where we're at right now, and just the little nuggets that we can incorporate into our lives. So thank you for all contributing and raising your hands and being a part of the conversation.